And now please welcome Rob Cossairt.
Hi. I'm not a great public speaker. Maybe one of these days I might choose to do this more. So mindfulness, meditation, myths, facts, and experiences. It's mainly, the PowerPoint's not a very pretty PowerPoint. It's mainly my notes that I throw out there. So like Dave said about me, because everyone wants what's your qualifications, what's your alluded. I got involved with, started getting involved reading and studying Tibetan Buddhism and the Western parts of it that started coming into this country in the late 60s, early 70s, back around 1992, 1991, 1992. Started meditating regularly, using Shamatha Vipassana meditation, which I'll go over shortly. Around 93, and regularly meeting on almost a daily basis starting about 1994. In between that time, between 1994 and 2010, I have lived and practiced at 3 retreat centers that offer meditation programs on a regular basis. People come in and do different types of meditation practice. Solitary retreats, group meditation, month-long practices. And I also lived up at a place up in Nova Scotia called Gamble Abbey, which is a Western abbey, meaning it has monks and nuns in the Buddhist tradition. They took something from the Thailand Buddhist Theravada, where monks can temporarily take ordination. 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. So they can live like a monastic and then one day say, okay, I'm done with this, and put it away, which in the Tibetan tradition was very unusual. Normally that was, you took lifelong vows, is what they were called. And I spent a little bit over a year up there, working mainly. I was not a monk. I came close to it. But as you can see, we had both lay people and monks and nuns living there. Just none happened to be in the little picture of me there. It's wrong to take pictures of nuns. No, I'm kidding.
Takes their souls.
And I've studied under some of the great, mostly Tibetan masters, both Western and also Tibetan. People like Khenpo Sutra Gyaltsen Rinpoche, Khandro Rinpoche, Pema Chodron, many of them. Everywhere from weekend teachings to, I belonged to a group that every year we did 14 days of teaching with one of the Tibetan masters. Literally left Tibet in 1959 with the Chinese army on his ass and the nuns and all that. So, these were in the Tibetan tradition, these were the real deals, So that's basically where I am not a scientist. I have nothing other than reading some studies and all this, but I do read up on what's going on, especially with the study of the mind and meditation. Meditation is, when it started becoming really popular in this country, which was around the late 60s, mid 60s, mostly the Hindu things, the swamis and all that. But, as it's grown, Zen came in right about that time and all that. As it's grown, it's gotten all kinds of misperceptions. We hear tales of yogis meditating and levitating off the floor, flying through the air, walking through walls, all that stuff. Never getting sick, never. And nowadays, a lot of the New Age movement has taken on, and it can help you lose weight. It can help you get rid of addiction. It can cure cancer. I've heard all these claims to meditation. And I'm not discounting meditation at all. Meditation, till this day, is a very vital part of my life. I don't meditate as much as I should or could. And there's reason for that, and I'll go into it. But it has shown benefit in mine and others' lives, and also in a numerous amount of studies. So, mindfulness meditation, that's what I'm going to talk about. Well, real quickly, I asked kind of briefly before we started, how many people have done meditation? How many have done mindfulness meditation? If you don't know what it is, then you probably didn't do it. You know, there's other. I'm gonna go slide. There's a couple different types of meditation, and everyone calls them different things. But we're doing my research and all that. You know, basically we've come down to a few. Focus meditation, which can be a focus on an object, shrine, candle, statue. And mantra kind of falls into there, but I put that off in its own things, like just sitting there going, Om, you know, that's a focused meditation. You're concentrating on there. Then there's the English translation for the Tibetan word is loving kindness. In Tibetan, it's Tonglen. And there's another word for Japanese that they use, but I can't think of it, which mainly means the same. That's another type. That's another type of meditation. And that falls into analytical and reflective meditation. And that's kind of meditation a lot of Westerners do and call meditation. That's kind of, they look at their life, they look at their day, they look at this, and that is meditation, you know. And mindfulness, which is second on the list there, but what I'm going to say is what I'm talking about. And there's three different main forces of mindfulness practice in the world from different schools of Buddhism. And I'm not going to try to talk a lot about Buddhism because that's not what this talk is about. But almost every form of mindfulness meditation has come from Buddhism, and that's where I learned it at, so there is a lot of ties there. Mindfulness meditation is what a lot of people believe Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, was the form of meditation he was practiced when he became enlightened. I don't know what enlightened means. Sam Harris's new book does touch a little bit on it, and I kind of like what he said. Enlightened doesn't mean omniscient. It doesn't mean that you're really one with everything. I guess that's a common definition, you know, nirvana, you know. But it's more like you understand the nature of your own mind and you understand the nature of your own suffering. And you see that in there, and by seeing that, you have broken yourself out of that. And I kind of like that. That's kind of paraphrase what he says. I could be completely wrong. It was a couple weeks ago I read that, you know. And to me, that saying makes more sense than becoming one with everything. So that's what the Buddha. They say the Buddha became enlightened as mindfulness meditation. So it's over 2,600 years old. You know, that's form of meditation has been passed down to different schools. And most likely the Buddha didn't come up with that, so it's probably even much older with Hindu, the Vedic traditions of Hinduism, which goes back almost another 2,000 years. So this form of, most likely, but there's not a lot of writings on it, can go back almost 5,000 years, 4,600 years, which is almost a lot older than the Earth. But there's three different schools of thought and practice of mindfulness that is normally practiced. The most common form, which you hear a lot of people, Sam Harris, that's what he does, is the Vipassana, which is insight meditation groups. That's based off of Theravada Buddhism, usually out of Thailand or something like that. Reason Sam recommends that is because there's not a lot of dogma in that tradition. There's talks of the Buddha and stuff like this, but there's a lot of focus on just mindfulness meditation. So, you know, for someone that is not a believer in Buddhism, doesn't believe in gods, doesn't believe in anything, it's an easier form of meditation to get into without a lot of dogma. There's Zazen, which I think is two Z's, but, which is Zen tradition. And that's, again, it's pretty much the same practice. There's different variations between Vipassana and Zazen, just techniques, really. But the main practice behind it is still the exact same. And in Tibetan Buddhism in the Western school, which is Shambhala, which I came from, they do shamatha vipassana. And like again, other than some techniques, they're all pretty much done the same. Someone that practice any form of them could pick up Suzuki Roshi's Way to Meditate, or The Path is a Goal by Trungpa Rinpoche, or Sam Harris's book and meditation. And other than a few different techniques, they're pretty much practiced exactly the same. The main focus of that type of meditation, and this is just real briefly, is you sit in a good posture. You don't have to sit in lotus style. You don't have to sit on a cushion if you can. You can sit in chairs, but it should be with a good posture, which for me, if you haven't noticed, is a really hard thing. And it's not quite focused because even though they talk on, you'll hear, if you hear any guided meditation, they talk about the breath. But you're not focusing on the breath. You're just being reflective. You're just noticing it. What you're really doing is just noticing your mind. And the breath is just an object to come back to when your mind goes way off. So what a lot of teachers say is that it's a 70-30 focus. 70% on mind, 30% on breath, or 30% on mind, 70% matters who you talk to. And I've been looking for the Buddha patch for a long time. If anyone knows where to find it, please let me know. So quickly, real brief history on, like I said, Vedic meditation. We do have records that go back to 1500 BCE of some type of there. Siddhartha Gautama, who is the Buddha. Now the Buddha, even though we use that to describe a being, like I said, I don't want to talk much on Buddhism, but it's translations and stuff like this. The Buddha wasn't his name. It wasn't even his title. Basically it just means the awakened one. Someone that woke up. Bodhi, Buddha, awakening, and so the awakened one, the one who awakened. And he was not a god. He never said he was a god. He never said anything like that. He just wanted to show people the path to getting rid of suffering. Or dukkha, really. Dukkha doesn't really mean suffering, but it's the closest word we have to mean it. And one of the aspects of that is meditation. In fact, that's what the story says. Is he meditated under a tree. 7 days, 7 months, 7 years, who knows? We get into the mythology of that. But he sat there for a long time, and he realized his mind. So that was in India. And from India, about 500 BCE, the teaching of the Buddha and meditation went to China, where it became known as Qian. And that was about 5 BCE. And right about, not too long ago that, from China, just barely got established there, Japan come in and took it and started calling it Zen about 7 BCE. But it was basically the same practice. It went to, from India to Tibet, about the 5th century, but it didn't really take hold until about the 7th or 8th century. And there's lots of stories on there, how it got into there. And about the 7th CE is when they started spreading to other countries in Asia, Thailand and Korea. And everyone that came into there, they followed the teachings of Buddha, but they took their own spin on it. Their own culture, their own all this. So, they all do it a little bit differently. But as you can see, we got 3 forms: Theravada, which, like I said, came out of Tibet. Thailand. Tibetan, which came out of Tibet, of course, and Zen, which came out of Japan. 3 different areas, and they all practice since about 5, 6, without much communication. It wasn't like jumping on the bus and going over there and say, "How you guys meditate this month?" And so the teachings and the practice of mindfulness meditation stayed in all 3 of them. So there had to be something in there. Around the 17th, 18th century, Westerners, in the United Kingdom especially, started getting involved with Buddhism and meditation, and societies popped up, and some of them cult-like, some of them not, and this went on into about the 1800s, where it came into this country. We had Buddhist practitioners most likely in this country before that. The Chinese that came here and helped build the railroads and all this. They were closed communities. They weren't open to the public. World's Fair in the late 1800s, some Zen teacher, I can't think of his name right now, went to the big conference on religion, and that brought some Theravada and Zen Buddhism into the Western culture with scientific minds and other religious minds, seen as viable. Around the 60s is when Tibetan Buddhism came in here. Until then, it was pretty closed off. Not a lot of people went to Tibet and all that, and they do call it the roof of the world. But because of the China coming in and taking back their country as they saw it, a lot of Tibetan teachers had to leave the country. They went to India, and some of them came over here, and it started spreading. So that's a real quick history of there. Now we have so many forms of meditation and Buddhism in this country. It's one of the fastest growing religions, and all this, and meditation is prominent. If you do a Google on meditation or search for the last 2 weeks, I'm sure you're going to hit some major magazines and articles talking a little bit about it. It always seems to be popping up in science, science news, and all that, because science is not, we have a lot of studies on meditation, but until recently, probably around 2009, most of the studies were not very scientific studies. They were gone to groups of meditators. TM is one of them. They would get these groups of meditators, and that was their control group. That was their group. Or they would, a lot of them were surveys and take this notebook home and write in it for 30 days and all this. So, not much. Now, with new technology, brain scans and all that, they're able to watch meditators and record them more scientifically. So some of the most common meditation myths, and I mean there's more, but these are the most, is meditation is all about emptying your mind. It's about blanking out, and there's a lot of stories I've heard on this. This is one of the biggest myths. I've never met anyone that can blank their mind. And I've heard at least a good couple dozen meditation masters in the Tibetan tradition and the Western tradition said they've never met anyone. Sam Harris relates a story in his new book on someone that he, at the time, he believed it because this is what that some Indian Swami was saying, this woman was able to empty her mind and be enlightened and all that. And everyone thought so, and then come to find out, she was just resting in the bliss of the adoration and a good meditation session, and it took her almost months to get out of it, but she hadn't emptied her mind, and when she said no, she goes, the thoughts were always there. Pema Chodron says in one of her books, you don't need to struggle not to have thoughts because that's impossible. Plain and simple, that's impossible. Your mind is always running. If your mind stops running, you're dead. That's basically it. There's always thoughts running through your mind. We might not always see them, or we avoid them, or we get in there. We enjoy that thought. We see it as a movie theater, a movie screen in our head, and we just immerse ourselves in that. But it's always there. There's always a thought. Meditation is calming and peaceful. It's the great relaxation technique. I got some asterisks on some of these because it can be. Meditation, and we'll talk on that. Meditation has been shown to relieve stress. And when you relieve stress, you're more relaxed. Most people are, that's, and you're more peaceful. If you're relaxed, you're calm, you're peaceful, and all that. So there is some correlation between meditation, but not everyone that's going to meditate is going to feel relaxed. Is not going to feel calm. And that kind of goes back to the first one. You're not emptying your mind. You're recognizing your thoughts. Same thing with weight loss. That's one I've been hearing for the last 2-3 years. Believe me, meditation helps weight loss. I wish you'd tell me how. Cure disease. I've heard stories, but it's one of those, I know someone that knows somebody. I have never met anyone that says meditation. I've met people that said they've gone into remission and they credit their meditation, but cancers do go into remission and we don't know why a lot of times, and we don't know if it's meditation, but that's what they want to personally believe, Same thing with sobriety and drug addiction. You know, I've heard this one, having friends of mine in and out of recovery, some of them being forced and all this, some of them would come in, and we had a group. When I used to meditate as a group up in Maryland, we would have some of them we met because we had members in our group that were in recovery, you know, and they would bring people by because they felt that meditation helped their recovery. And it might in some ways, because I mean, if you're building a social network and all this and spending time around people that aren't drinking and drugging, you're in recovery, you know, and the meditation can help you if you're doing it properly, feel relaxed and better about yourself and all that. So, but it's not curing anyone, you know. Just recently, I read a story on Deepak Chopra, who one of my favorite people in the world. He's now trying to run a study. He's running a study on how meditation can help change DNA. You know, and it's a big thing that he's saying that with meditation. And I do know some other people that believe in this. You know, one guy wanted blue eyes. And for almost 6 months, he meditated on having blue eyes. His eyes are still just as dark as they were before. You know, I told him to buy a pair of contacts. Levitation and flying. I'm not gonna bash any form of meditation, but there is TM, Transcendental Meditation. And it's not talked about much anymore, but for the longest times during when it first started getting popular, the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, the levitation thing was a big part for a lot of the groups. One of my favorite growing up, probably an inspiration to me why I love magic, Doug Henning. If everyone remembers the 70s, he was really big on TM. And he was really big, and his whole thing was learning to levitate. And they would sit there in groups and hop up and down, sitting lotus style, trying to levitate. You know, I have never seen anyone levitate or fly. And there are stories. This little picture here is one of my favorite Tibetan stories. And it's Milarepa. Milarepa is a Tibetan. It translates to kind of a yogi saint, but he's not a saint like we would think. You know, he was kind of rude, crude, and all this. He just wanted to live in the mountains and meditate. That's all he did. And there were stories of him flying through the air. I mean, in fact, they even have a comic book came out in the 90s, you know. It's almost like a superhero. That's kind of why I like him, because he flies around and he gets in people's face and shows them his ass and all that. So if you ever want some good story, you know, I mean, as you can see, he didn't wear much clothing, you know. And that ties in with magical powers, which they also said Milarepa had. You know, he could teleport. He could go from one flower, someone pluck a flower and go into the flower and come out another one halfway around the world. You know, these are stories that come out that this is a meditation master. My ex-wife insists that one of our teachers, and she was holding the door, or doing guard duty or door duty or whatever you want to call it, holding the door from him. He got out of his car, walked in pouring down rain to the door, and he didn't have one drop of rain on him. You know, but that's one person's experience. You know, that's what she saw, because that's what she wanted to see. I saw rain drops on his coat, so, you know, he just happened to probably caught the break in the rain, you know. Science. Like I said, I am not a scientist. If I mispronounce any words or anything like this, don't take it personally. Like I said, studies are inclusive, because it's only been recently that they started using scientific methods to measure how meditation can help people. But there are been some studies, and and they're showing more and more positive every study. One of them was called stress, because that's one of the biggest things. That's a whole relaxation method. They've shown by taking the brain scans and all this that cortisol levels, and cortisol, I didn't know what the word was, but it's the chemical in your brain that deals with stress. And they show that people that meditate on a regular basis or have experience, the study was people doing meditation for 30 straight days, an hour a day, 2 hours a day, and they measured them before, during, and after, and seen them, and they showed on average that most of the participants in the studies, their cortisol levels have dropped tremendously from when they started to the end. Now that's only one study, but there's some positive aspect to it. Also along the same line is the vagus nerve. And I had read that about a year or two ago in the study, and I just saw it posted the other day. I went, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. And that's the same thing. My problem with the vagus nerve is the way they measure it. You know, it's heart rate, heartbeats is the typical form. And, you know, so again, even this, but the studies show that meditating lowers the vagal tone, and that relieves stress. It gives, gets rid of agitation and all that, the people's ability to deal with it. Pain, and this one has been studied, there's probably been about a good couple dozen studies on this one in different schools and all this. People practicing meditation and their pain tolerance. And I think this kind of falls into a little bit with stories of the yogis being able to meditate in extreme conditions and all this, that there is showing that people that meditate on them probably have a higher pain tolerance than they did before they started meditating. Psychological health. Positive attitude, satisfaction in life, the ability to quickly adapt to new situations, new emotional changes, and that kind of ties in with the stress, because that's where a lot of stress comes in, you know, in our lives. And it has shown that meditation, people that meditate on a regular basis, some of the studies have shown, have a more positive outlook on life. They're looking at life with new eyes, you know. They're not as down upon themselves and down upon the world and all this as they were before they started meditating. Another, at least a half a dozen studies have shown that their meditation can increase memory and cognitive ability. And this, again, is not conclusive. It's only been a few, but it's showing through, again, brain waves that meditation stimulates certain areas of the brain where the memory sits. So, and then that kind of falls into, you know, we'll go into that in a few minutes, and emotional health. And all this ties in, I think, basically a lot with emotional health. You know, meditation can help people in this with studies and also personal experience recognize emotions and feelings and all this, and more quickly realize, and by realizing it, able to, I hate the Luigi word, but let it go, let it go. And these are the citations, if anyone's interested in what the studies are and all that, you know. There's a reason meditation can do all that. It's basically one thing. Mindfulness meditation, the practice of it, one of the most important aspects is you're learning to know your mind. You're learning to know yourself. That's what the whole point of mindfulness meditation, that's why it's not about blanking your mind out. It's about recognizing your mind. Recognizing the thoughts that come out and realizing that they're only thoughts. It's not anything that's really happening. You know, my first meditation retreat, long one, 28-day group practice retreat, majority held in silence. We meditate from 6:30 in the morning, and there was chanting and all this, but mostly doing shamatha, vipassana meditation until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. You know, now there's breaks. We had a 3-hour work period, we had lunch, we had dinner, we had breakfast. It was probably maybe 6 to 8 hours meditation a day. You know, and sitting there, and then this is my personal experience, you know, every day I went through something new. I fell in love, I fell in hate, all this, and I felt, and one thing is, I got so, sitting there, and I'm seeing something dealing with my personal life, my wife back in away. I had a newborn baby, not even 6 months old. I guess he was about 6 months old, maybe 7 months old. And all this stuff came up, and I'm about ready to leave, run away. You know, this is, you know, this is too much, this is too hard, and all that. And they said, well, if you need to call her, talk to her. We're not supposed to do any outside contact unless it's emergencies, but they're also not there to make you go crazy and nuts and then all that. And I didn't call her because I said, okay, I'll wait till I get home and talk to her, you know. But that was with talking to people, and that's one thing I really want to mention. Meditation is not for everyone, and mindfulness meditation. There can be, and if you suffer from any kind of psychological problems, and I'm not talking, but I've seen and heard stories of people with serious depression that go to use meditation to help them because they've heard that it can, and they get even worse, because mindfulness meditation is about recognizing the thoughts, seeing the thoughts come up, and there will, if you're doing the practice, thoughts will come up that deal with not nice things. You're looking at yourself, you're looking at your life, you're looking at, it's not the point of it, but it all comes up. All this stuff comes up, and you start feeling bad about yourself, you start becoming angry, you start becoming angry at this person, all this, and it's hard to let that go, especially things that have been buried. I've seen people during long retreat sessions flip out because they recover a memory from when they were 4 or 5 years old that they did not know while they're sitting there, and it just demolishes them. So it can be a dangerous thing. And so if there's any kind of psychological issues or anything like this, my thing is not to meditate, but also be sure you have a professional within easy reach, a phone call or something like this, that when stuff starts coming up. Hey, doc, I need to talk about this, or something like that, because it has happened in people in the past that have just completely lost it over mindfulness meditation, because it's dealing with stuff that deal with that, and it's not pretty. So I know that's quicker, and I kept it kind of general, and that's what I wanted to do.